The night was chaos. Sirens screamed through the empty streets as flames tore through abandoned warehouses on the city's edge. A man, bruised and bleeding, dragged an unconscious police officer behind a burning car. Bullets shattered the concrete around him, but he didn't stop. That man was an ex-convict, and the cop he was saving was the same one who'd once arrested him. Smoke thickened, tires exploded. He pressed his body over the cops, shielding him from the storm of gunfire. He had every reason to run, every reason to save himself, but something inside him refused, because tonight wasn't about survival. It was about redemption. 2 years earlier, he'd been nothing but a small-time thief. Ethan Cole, a name no one cared to remember. He wasn't born bad, but life had a way of twisting good intentions into desperate decisions. His mother was dying, the bills were endless, and no one would hire a man without a name or a degree. So one night, he made a choice that would change everything. He broke into a jewelry store. The alarm screamed before he could even touch the glass. And within minutes, red and blue lights painted the street. That was the night he met Detective Ryan Hale, the man who would change his life twice. Hale didn't see a desperate son that night. He saw just another criminal. Ethan begged for a chance to explain, but Hale's cuffs were already cold around his wrists. And as the patrol car drove away, Ethan watched the city lights blur through the glass, wondering how one mistake could erase everything good left in him. Prison changed him, not through violence or punishment, but through silence. Day after day, he stared at the ceiling of his cell, thinking about his mother, wondering if she was still alive, or if she died believing her son was a thief. When he got the letter confirming her death, something inside him broke. But in that same breaking, something new began to grow. Promise that when he got out, he'd live differently. He'd prove that a man could come out of darkness and still find light. 3 years later, that chance came. Ethan was released early for good behavior. He stepped out of the gates with nothing but an old coat and a heart full of quiet determination. He worked any job he could find: construction, cleaning, delivering groceries. Every coin he earned felt like a piece of dignity slowly being rebuilt. He kept his head down, stayed out of trouble, and tried to live invisible. Until one night, the past came crashing back in the most unexpected way. The TV flickered in the corner of his apartment as he ate dinner alone. A news anchor's voice filled the room. Detective Ryan Hale is in critical condition following a violent ambush by the Raven Gang. Ethan froze. The fork slipped from his hand and clattered onto the floor. Ryan Hale, the same man who'd cuffed him, the same man whose face he'd hated for years, was now lying somewhere between life and death. But the next sentence changed everything. The suspects remain at large, and authorities warn that the gang may attempt to finish the job. He could have turned the TV off. He could have walked away and said he got what he deserved. But instead, he felt something else, something heavy in his chest, a voice whispering, "Do the right thing this time." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He remembered Hale's eyes the night of the arrest. Not cruel, just cold. He remembered the weight of the cuffs, the shame, the silence in the cell. But now, Hale was the one trapped, surrounded by danger, hunted by men who had no mercy. And Ethan made a decision that surprised even himself. He grabbed his keys, climbed into his rusty pickup truck, and drove toward the city lights, not to run away, but to save the man who had once ruined his life. Hours later, under the rain-soaked bridge where the gang had cornered the wounded detective, Ethan's truck roared into the chaos. Headlights cut through the dark as gunfire erupted. He didn't have a plan, just instinct. He rammed the truck into the gang's van, sending metal and sparks flying. Pain shot through his shoulder as a bullet grazed him, but he kept moving. He dragged Hale from the wreckage, shielding him with his own body. The gang shouted, cursed, fired again. But Ethan didn't stop until he heard the sirens closing in. And then, silence. Backup arrived. The gang scattered into the shadows. Ethan collapsed beside the injured cop, barely conscious. Hale looked at him, disbelief in his eyes. The man he'd once put behind bars had just saved his life. And though neither spoke a word, the moment said everything words couldn't. Weeks passed. In the white quiet of a hospital room, Ethan woke to the sound of a heart monitor and footsteps approaching. Detective Hale stood there, no badge, no gun, no judgment. Just a man humbled by fate. He looked at the ex-con, this broken stranger who'd risked everything for him, and for the first time his voice softened. He thanked him. He told him he'd been wrong, that sometimes the system fails to see the humanity behind a mistake. Ethan didn't ask for forgiveness. He just smiled, because in saving Hale, he'd finally saved himself. They say redemption is a word used by the guilty, but Ethan proved it's a word earned by the brave. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a saint. He was simply a man who refused to let his past define his ending. And as the city lights flickered through the hospital window, Hale thought of how strange fate could be, that the man he'd once arrested was now the reason he was alive. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll just yet. Hit subscribe so you never miss stories of courage, forgiveness, and second chances. Every share helps this story reach someone who needs hope today. And if you believe that people can change, drop a red heart in the comments, because sometimes one act of redemption can change everything.